The house always felt quieter at dusk. Not silent, never truly silent, but filled with the kind of stillness that carried memory in its walls. The soft tick of the clock above the fireplace. The low hum of the refrigerator. The sound of Eleanor's breath as she stood by the window, watching the day surrender to evening. Outside, the sky was bruised lavender and gray, clouds stretched thin like something pulled too far and left fragile. The streetlights flickered on one by one, hesitant, as if unsure they were ready to illuminate what the night might reveal. Eleanor folded her arms loosely over her chest. She had learned long ago that waiting could feel heavier than action. Behind her, the front door opened. Noah stepped inside quietly, as he always did. He moved through the world with a softness that had never left him, not even after grief had shaped him, not even after responsibility had settled into his shoulders. His jacket hung loose, his hair damp from mist, his eyes carrying something distant tonight. Something unsettled. "You're late," Eleanor said gently, without turning. "I know." His voice was calm, but there was a pause before the words, the kind that lingered just long enough to be noticed. She turned then, studying him the way only a mother could, reading the spaces between his expressions, sensing what wasn't being said. He avoided her gaze, setting his keys down with care, as if noise itself might betray him. Dinner waited on the stove. It always did. Eleanor believed in routines the way some people believed in prayer. "You eat?" she asked. "No." Another pause. "I wasn't hungry." That, too, was new. Eleanor nodded once, masking the shift inside her. Hunger disappeared when something else consumed you. She knew the truth intimately. Noah shrugged off his jacket, revealing the thin chain at his collarbone, something Eleanor had never seen him wear before. It caught the light briefly, silver against skin, before disappearing beneath his shirt as he moved. Her eyes lingered. "Since when do you wear jewelry?" she asked lightly. Noah's hand rose instinctively to his chest. He froze for half a second too long. "It's not mine," he said. The air changed. Eleanor felt it the way one feels pressure before a storm. Invisible, but undeniable. "Who does it belong to?" she asked. Noah hesitated. Not dramatically. Not guiltily. Just enough to signal that whatever answer he gave would only be part of the truth. "Someone who needed me to hold on to it," he said quietly. Eleanor turned back toward the window. Outside, a car passed, headlights stretching across the glass like fleeting clarity. "People don't usually give away things they need," she said. "No," Noah replied. "They give them to people they trust." The words settled between them, heavy and unresolved. Eleanor didn't ask the name. She already knew it. Lila. She had noticed Lila weeks ago, noticed the way Noah's posture changed when he spoke about her, how his voice softened without intention. Lila, with her careful smiles and guarded eyes. Lila, who wore long sleeves even in warm weather. Lila, who listened more than she spoke, as if words had once been used against her. Eleanor had welcomed her, because kindness was easier than suspicion. Now she wondered if that kindness had opened a door that could not be closed again. Dinner passed in quiet fragments. The clink of cutlery. The steam rising and fading. Noah ate little, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. Eleanor watched him without staring, cataloging every small shift, every breath that came too shallow or too slow. Afterward, Noah stood to leave the table. "I'm going out again," he said. Eleanor looked up sharply. "It's late. I won't be long. You said that earlier." This time, he met her eyes. "I have to," he said. Not defensively, not angrily, just truthfully. Eleanor felt the familiar tightening in her chest, the instinct to protect, to correct, to pull him back from the edge of something unnamed. She had raised him to know right from wrong, to understand boundaries, to respect the invisible lines that kept people safe. But the look in his eyes told her he already knew he was standing on one of those lines. And that he might step over it anyway. "Be careful," she said, the words tasting different than they used to. Noah nodded. As he reached the door, the chain slipped free from his collar again, the silver circle catching the light, glinting like a quiet confession. A circle. No beginning. No end. The door closed behind him. Eleanor remained seated long after the sound of his footsteps faded, her gaze fixed on the empty space he'd left behind. Somewhere deep inside her, something shifted, an instinct older than reason, whispering that tonight was not just another night. That whatever line Noah was approaching, he wasn't approaching it alone. And neither, she feared, was she. Night settled over the city like a held breath. Noah drove without music, the streetlights sliding across the windshield in slow, rhythmic pulses. Each red light felt longer than the last, each pause stretching his thoughts thin. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel, then loosened again, as if he were practicing restraint even in motion. Lila waited where she always did, outside the closed bookstore on Maple Street, beneath the flickering bulb that never quite decided whether to stay on. She stood with her arms folded, shoulders slightly drawn inward, as though bracing against something more than the cold. When she saw him, her posture shifted. Not dramatically, just enough to reveal relief she didn't want to admit. "You came," she said softly. "I said I would." Noah parked and stepped out, the air sharp against his skin. For a moment they stood facing each other, close but not touching, the space between them dense with things unsaid. Her eyes flicked to his chest, where the chain rested beneath his shirt, and something fragile crossed her face. "Is it safe?" she asked. He nodded. For now. That answer carried weight. It always did. They walked side by side, matching pace unconsciously. Lila's steps were careful, measured, as though she'd learned the cost of moving too quickly through the world. Noah adjusted to her rhythm without thinking, slowing where he might usually stride. Silence followed them, but not the empty kind. It hummed, alive with awareness. Every time their arms brushed, something subtle tightened in his chest. He noticed the warmth of her presence, the faint scent of soap and rain clinging to her coat. "You don't have to do this," she said suddenly. He looked at her. "Do what?" "Keep showing up." Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. She tucked them into her sleeves, hiding the tremor. "You don't owe me anything." Noah stopped walking. She turned too, startled, their closeness magnified by stillness. The street behind them was quiet, the city momentarily uninterested in their small, private moment. "I'm not doing this because I owe you," he said. His voice was low, controlled, as if he were afraid of what would happen if he let it rise. "I'm doing it because I choose to." Lila searched his face, as though looking for cracks in the certainty. "People don't usually choose me," she said. "Not without wanting something back." Noah swallowed. He felt the truth of that statement like a bruise, tender, unseen. "I don't want anything," he replied. The lie wasn't in the words. It was in the simplicity of them. They resumed walking, closer now, the silence altered. The secret circle pressed warm against Noah's chest, its presence suddenly louder than his thoughts. He reached for it instinctively, fingers brushing the fabric of his shirt, grounding himself. Lila noticed. "You're still wearing it," she said. "You told me not to give it back until you asked for it." She nodded. "It's stupid, I know." "It's not." She hesitated. "It's just a circle. Nothing special." Noah stopped again, turning fully toward her this time. "That's not true." Her breath caught. "You don't keep something that close to your heart if it doesn't mean something," he said. "You don't give it to someone unless it matters." The streetlight above them flickered, casting shifting shadows across her face. For a moment, her carefully built composure wavered. "It reminds me I survived," she whispered. "That I got out." The words settled between them, heavy and sacred. Noah didn't speak. He didn't reach for her. He let the silence hold the confession, honoring it by not rushing to fill the space. His restraint felt deliberate, almost reverent. "I'll keep it safe," he said finally. Her eyes shone, not with tears, but with something close. Gratitude, perhaps. Or the fragile beginning of trust. They reached her building, an old structure with chipped paint and narrow windows that revealed nothing of what lay inside. Lila stopped at the entrance, keys clenched in her fist. "You don't have to wait," she said. "I know." He stayed anyway. They stood facing each other, the door between her safety and his decision. The air felt charged, every second stretching thin. Noah was acutely aware of the line, how easy it would be to step closer, to let his hand rise, to offer comfort that might be mistaken for something more. Or worse, understood perfectly. "I don't know why you're different," Lila said quietly. "But you are." Noah's chest tightened. He thought of Eleanor, of the values she had etched into him through example and sacrifice. Of the quiet disappointment that would live in her eyes if she could see him now, standing on the edge of something dangerous. "I'm not," he said. "I'm just trying." She smiled faintly. "That's what scares me." She unlocked the door, pausing before stepping inside. Her hand brushed his arm, light, accidental, devastating. "Good night, Noah." "Good night." The door closed. Noah stood there longer than necessary, the echo of her presence lingering like warmth after a flame. When he finally turned away, his phone buzzed in his pocket. A message. From Eleanor. "Are you safe?" He stared at the screen, thumb hovering, the weight of truth pressing down on him. He typed a response, erased it, then typed again. "Yes," he sent. "I am." It wasn't the whole truth. As he walked back toward his car, the silver circle rested against his heart, silent but unyielding, an unbroken shape binding him to a promise he hadn't fully understood when he made it. Somewhere, a line blurred. And Noah knew, without certainty, but with dread, that he was already closer to crossing it than he wanted to admit. Morning arrived without mercy. Eleanor woke before the alarm, the gray light of dawn pressing gently through the curtains, settling across the room like an unanswered question. She lay still, listening to the quiet she had once trusted. It felt different now, thinner, more fragile, as though something underneath it had cracked during the night. Noah hadn't come home until just before sunrise. She had heard the door. The careful steps. The pause in the hallway, as if he'd stood there debating whether to check on her. He hadn't. At breakfast, the air between them felt stretched, taut with restraint. Eleanor moved through familiar motions, pouring coffee, slicing fruit, while her thoughts stayed fixed on the silver circle she couldn't stop seeing in her mind. An object so small, yet heavy enough to tilt the balance of an entire household. Noah sat across from her, eyes shadowed, hands wrapped around his mug as if he needed the warmth to stay grounded. He looked older this morning. Not by years, but by experience. You didn't sleep, Eleanor said. Neither accusation nor concern, just observation. No, he replied. I didn't. She nodded. Neither did I. Silence followed, layered and deliberate. Eleanor studied him through it, recognizing the signs she had once seen in his father, the quiet withdrawal, the internal debate, the burden of a choice already made. Is she safe? Eleanor asked. Noah's gaze snapped up. You know, I'm not blind, she said softly. And I raised you. He exhaled, slow and controlled, as if releasing something he'd been holding in for too long. Yes, he said. She's safe. For now. The words struck Eleanor harder than she expected. For now. A phrase built on uncertainty. On danger not yet resolved. She was in trouble, Noah continued, before Eleanor could speak. Real trouble. And no one else was listening. Eleanor felt her chest tighten. And you decided it was your responsibility. I decided I couldn't walk away. There it was. The line. No longer theoretical. No longer distant. You're crossing into something you don't understand, Eleanor said. Compassion can become something else if you're not careful. Noah looked down at his hands. I know. Do you? Her voice softened, despite herself. Because it doesn't feel like you do. He reached into his shirt then, drawing out the chain. The silver circle lay against his palm, catching the morning light. Eleanor's breath caught, not because of what it was, but because of how carefully he held it. She gave me this, he said. Not because she wanted something from me, but because she trusted me. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. Trust. The most dangerous currency of all. She told me it reminds her she survived, Noah continued. That she escaped something that nearly broke her. Eleanor opened her eyes again. And you? He met her gaze. It reminds me that doing the right thing isn't always clean. The confession settled heavily between them. Eleanor felt it shift something deep inside her, a quiet fracture in the certainty she had lived by for decades. She had taught Noah to protect, to stand up for others, to act with integrity. She had not taught him how to live with the cost of those choices. Do you love her? Eleanor asked quietly. The question hung in the air, fragile and sharp all at once. Noah didn't answer immediately. His silence stretched, thick with hesitation, with fear of the truth forming even as he searched for it. I don't know what I feel, he said finally. I know that when she's afraid, I feel it too. That when she's quiet, the world feels heavier. And when she looks at me like I'm something safe. His voice faltered. I want to be that, he finished. Even if I shouldn't. Eleanor felt tears sting her eyes, not from anger, but from recognition. Love had always been messy. She had just hoped it wouldn't reach her son this way. Later that evening, Eleanor found herself alone in the living room, the house dim and hushed. Noah had gone out again, his explanation brief, his eyes apologetic. She didn't stop him. Instead, she sat with her thoughts, replaying every moment that had led them here. The pride, the fear, the quiet grief of realizing that protecting your child sometimes meant letting them step into darkness without you. A knock at the door startled her. When she opened it, Lila stood on the threshold. She looked smaller up close. More fragile. But there was something else too, resolve, trembling but present. The silver chain was missing from her neck, leaving pale skin bare. I'm sorry to come here, Lila said. But I needed to see you. Eleanor studied her, seeing not a threat, but a wound still healing. He told me about you, Lila continued. About what you mean to him. Eleanor's heart clenched. And what do you mean to him? Lila swallowed. That's what I'm afraid of. They stood facing each other, two women connected by one man and a choice neither of them had asked for. Eleanor saw the truth then, not in accusation, but in shared vulnerability. This can't continue without consequences, Eleanor said gently. I know, Lila replied. That's why I came. Footsteps sounded behind them. Noah stood frozen in the hallway, eyes moving between his mother and Lila, the weight of everything he hadn't said crashing down at once. The silver circle rested now in Eleanor's hand. Lila must have given it to her at the door, a silent passing of responsibility. 3 hearts. One unbroken shape. No one spoke. And in that silence, Eleanor understood the truth she had been avoiding. Saving someone doesn't always look like rescue. Sometimes, it looks like letting go.